Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. Today we are joined by Janel Scott-Lind. Janel is the Digital Marketing Manager at DatabaseUSA. Janel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you for taking some time out of your schedule. Today we're actually going to be talking about 3 things that you should know about driving organic traffic, which I think is a very compelling topic for today's episode. But before we get into that, maybe you can tell our listeners a little about what you and your team at DatabaseUSA are up to these days.
Perfect. Yeah. So I work for a database company, and what we do is we sell database solutions to other companies. I personally work in the internal marketing department, so we market for our brand specifically. I work in digital marketing, so I do a lot of AdWords, I do SEO, website fixes, and things of that nature. So that's basically what our team works on every day, all day. We also have a lot of sister brands, and so we do the digital marketing and SEO for those companies as well.
Well, and very important work. I mean, these are the kinds of problems and solutions that literally everyone these days needs. So we're really excited to bring you on the show and sort of tap you for your expertise. And today we're going to be talking about driving organic traffic. I mean, can we maybe start off and just sort of define what it is that we're talking about today?
So organic traffic is basically non-paid web traffic that finds you through, different social media channels, but mainly the search engines. And so basically when you search, the first things that you'll see at the top of the search are maybe 2 to 4 advertisements, and then post those advertisements, after those advertisements, you'll get into the organic traffic. Now, a long time ago, well, not so long ago, but about 2 years ago, a long time for internet people, I suppose. But basically, they used to have the ads, they were colored, a different color. They were green and pink. Well, they've taken those away, so it's now harder to kind of identify what is a paid advertisement versus what is an organic advertisement. So I typically tell people to look 2 to 4, little descriptions down into that search query, and that's where you kind of start seeing that organic, nesting.
Yeah. And that's obviously something that everyone is interested in capturing. I mean, we all pay for advertising. It's something that everyone does, but to get that sort of natural organic traffic, to get those organic search results is so hugely important. So let's talk about, what are these 3 things that everyone needs to know when you're attempting to drive that kind of organic traffic to your site?
Absolutely. The first thing everyone needs to know is that there are free tools out there to be able to start utilizing, and they offer the ability to find out what queries, so what people are typing into, say, Google or Bing or Yahoo to find you. And so one of these that I use every day is called Google Search Console. And what it offers is the ability to see what people have queried to find you. And not only that, it also gives you relevant data about how many searches for that query there are in a month, how many people not only searched it, but how many people clicked on your little blurb on the search engine, and how many people found you, basically, and how many clicks that was, and how many impressions that you specifically got. So impressions meaning how many people got to your page from that search query.
How does that information pay off, I think, is really what I'm trying to get to. What do having sort of data and metrics and information is valuable, but it's of course of equal value then to be able to say, all right, well, now I have this information, this is what I can do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, if you search email database, you'll find DatabaseUSA pops right up to the top of that search query. Well, I have created, now knowing what that data, has, it typically gets 4,000 views for that query in any given month. And so since we show up on that page, we're being seen every single time. So what I did was I made a page that was called Email Databases. And I took the information that Google Search Console gave me and I built out pages around those queries because I knew that people were looking for this information. We were showing up, maybe not in the first spot or the second spot. And so what I did is I tailor-made pages specifically to those queries that were getting a lot of traffic, right? And so that's kind of how I've leveraged that data. And so by building out these new pages that were specific to these queries, we're now more relevant for that query, right? And so sometimes we show up twice on that first page for email databases because we're building out pages that are built for those queries.
That's fantastic. Yeah, very deliberate, very intentional. So that's a great point. Google Search Console definitely sounds like a very powerful tool. Everyone should check it out. The second point that we had sort of talked about a little bit before we started recording today's episode is that relevant content can only take you so far. What is that idea?
So a lot of people, I've heard this kind of as a buzz key phrase or whatever. Content is king, or whatever. The content is the more content that you generate, the more you're going to start pulling up in the search engines. And that's really only true if the content also comes with clicks. So if nobody clicks that or nobody can find it, then it's not really relevant, is it? And so basically, you can generate as many blogs as you want, but if nobody can find your blog, then there's not really a point to continue putting out all this content. And so what I tell people is, write content deliberately and focus all of your energy for a week or 2 weeks to drive traffic to that content. Because Google assumes that the more clicks that you receive for a search query, the more relevant you are to that query. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So if you get a lot of clicks for, email database, Google assumes that you must be the authority on email databases, right? And so if you are driving traffic and driving clicks to your content, you don't have to put out a lot of content because a lot of content doesn't matter, but you have to put out important content that people are going to relate with and that are going to get a lot of clicks from the search engines.
Yeah.
And that's basically it. Google's algorithm, every SEO expert or every SEO person or guru or whatever you want to call them has got a theory about how Google chooses what's on those first couple pages. My theory, personally, it's all about clicks. It's all about click-through. So the more pertinent or the more specific you are or that page is to the query, the more clicks that it receives. The more clicks it receives, the more relevant that Google assumes that content is to that query. And it works across the board, right? And so you could put out a blog post about, database information or data information. And if a lot of people that are searching click on that link, you will rise up to the top of that first page. It is what it is.
Got it. It sounds a little bit though like you're assuming that you've made it onto the first page to begin with, though. And I mean, we've talked to people that, if you're not making it until the second page, it's really not doing you any good. And so do you have any advice then on, making it to that first page to begin with? Am I totally
Absolutely.
Off base about that?
No, you are right on cue. And I kind of talk about SEO almost like a political campaign. I know our political environment is a little, hilarious nowadays, but
hilarious and terrifying. So
and terrifying. But I think of it kind of like a political campaign. You could be the best politician and you could have the most deliberate message, But if nobody hears you and nobody backs you, then your message really doesn't get very far, right? And so pairing SEO with paid advertising helps you be able to jump the line from being on page 30 to being on page 2 and eventually page 1. So just using a little bit of, whether that be, AdWords for a couple of weeks to a really low, cost per click, maybe $1 per click for 2 weeks, just to get that, that little engine running on that page. It really does help, because what Google provides, it doesn't care if you show up or the clicks that you receive are from paid or from organic. Their assertion is just that if you get a lot of clicks, we assume that you are relevant to this query. So it doesn't really matter how you get there. It matters how you stay there, kind of. And so if you can get, a couple of weeks of AdWords going on a specific page with those keywords that drive people to that query and drive people to that page, if you get 100 clicks, Google will automatically assume that you must be very specific to this query. And so you will jump the ranks from, like you were saying, being kind of in the back and kind of missing, you'll jump up real quick to that first page and that second page. And then the more clicks, obviously, that you could receive from the Google AdWords, that's going to help your click-through rate. And then as it starts to ascend that first page, it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point, because once it's reached page 1, people will, continue to click on it. And so, I always tell people to kind of use it. Think of SEO as kind of this political campaign. You need the money to be able to back it, but once it gets into power, it can stay there, right?
Yeah, you need a little extra juice to overcome that initial inertia. You need a little jump start.
Yep, exactly. And like I said, a lot of people don't have a lot of money to put into AdWords. I'm not saying to use it to advertise for 6 months. Give it 2 weeks at a really low cost per click, like $1 a click, and it will, I guarantee you, it will start pulling up in those ranks.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, and third point, you've really already kind of touched on it, that clicks equals relevance for search engines. So, like you said, if you can get it started, if you can drive a few clicks, if you can get that momentum going, you're going to become more and stay relevant.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Because once you can get to that first page, people will begin to click without the help of the AdWord or without the help of any kind of, display advertising or anything like that. Once the clicks start happening, Google can't tell the difference between if the click is coming. It can tell the difference, but from an SEO standpoint, again, it just assumes that if the click is relevant to the query, then that must mean that it is important for that query.
Well, Janel, you obviously know what you're talking about. I really do appreciate you coming on the show and sort of sharing your expertise with our listeners. I'm sure there's plenty more that you could talk about when it comes to SEO and organic traffic. So if anyone out there listening is interested in sort of connecting and finding out more about today's episode, finding out more about DatabaseUSA, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
They can go to our website. It's databaseusa.com. And reach out and, utilize our database. It can definitely help you, in a lot of SEO goals, actually. So, reach out, or you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. I'm Janel Lind.
Perfect, Janel. Well, we really do appreciate your time and you sharing your wisdom. Thank you so much. And it was a pleasure having you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
If you're a B2B marketer, we want to feature you on sites like the Huffington Post, Social Media Examiner, and Chief Marketer. Every week, we send out a question related to B2B marketing. We use the responses to those questions to fuel the content we write for really popular websites. So head over to sweetfishmedia.com/questions and sign up today.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.